This
City
conference will now be recorded.
I'll call the Willmar City Council meeting for May 6th at 7 p.m. to order, and we will be discussing our candidate selection for our interview process. With that, roll call.
Janelle, put your microphone on.
Got it now. Mayor Calvin,
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Here.
Councilmember Osmus,
Here.
Butterfield,
Here.
O'Brien,
Here.
Osk,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Plowman, Nelson.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Okay, with that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Fagerly will lead us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, tonight is another exciting evening, and we have a tremendous responsibility in front of us, and that responsibility is to select who we would like to come and view our community, learn more about our community, and learn more about us, not only as a community, but also as a council, how we work, how we function, but more importantly, to find out if they indeed want to join us as our city administrator. And with that responsibility really gives us an opportunity to set the course of where we want to be as a community. What does that look like for our next city administrator? And I felt it very important, as did our consultant, that we have some time to just process that from last Tuesday. So for those of you that were ready to make a decision on Tuesday, thank you for having patience with us and waiting. And for those of you that are still contemplating, what do we do from this point? Let me just share a couple observations. The candidate pool that we had was 4 qualified candidates that bring a vast array of experiences that they can bring to the city of Willmar. In the city of Willmar, we have traditionally sought people that have extensive administrator experience throughout the country, not just the state of Minnesota, but we've brought people in from elsewhere, and we've always been looking at that experience side of it. On our candidate pool tonight, we have 2 candidates that do not have a lot of city administrator experience, although they have a lot of leadership experience. And then we have 2 candidates that have a lot of city administrator and leadership experience. So the decision for us this evening is to decide, how do we want to move forward? What do we want our city to look like? And what do we want our next city administrator to be like? And so this evening, we have a choice of bringing back 1 candidate, 2 candidates, 3 candidates, or 4 candidates. So the choice is going to be the council's choice. And what I would like to do is I would like us just to go around like we did when we selected our candidates to interview. I'd like us to do it the same way and just rank the 4 candidates as you have scored them in your own mind. If you're not comfortable with that, please tell me how you'd like to do it differently, and I certainly would entertain that. But I think that just going through and scoring it, scoring the candidates, I think that may be a good way to do it again. And then if we wish to, then have dialogue about all 4 candidates. Our other option is for me to call on each council member individually and then ask you to give a brief synopsis of all 4 candidates. So my preferred way of doing it would be for us to score 1 through 4, my first candidate through my 4th candidate, and then we could do it that way, or we can simply talk about it. So council, what are your wishes on how you'd like to handle it? Or Patty, do you have some direction for us other than what I'm talking about? Because we haven't talked about this. Sorry, I probably should have.
One of the options that you might want to take a look at is if everybody has an idea of who they would like to bring forward, would be an opportunity to just say who your top two, if you have, or your top candidates to move forward is another option.
Sure, that's a good way to do it too. I like that better, actually. That way it lets people know. So I will start with Councilmember Fagerly. Tell us who your top candidate is, and then maybe some comments about why you felt that candidate was your top candidate.
Mine was number 3, or can we say the name?
You can say the
name.
name to your public.
Okay, Mr. Woofington he was local. He has experience and he knows the area here. And you want my number 2?
Please.
Yes.
Number 2 is number 2. I think he's young, he's eager to learn and willing to learn. And I think he'd be a good asset for the community in the area. So.
Thank you, Rick. Next, Councilmember Nelson. Audrey? Your first candidate and then second. I'm sorry, Brian?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Fagerly, could you just identify the name? You said number 2 is number 2, but we didn't have a number 2 selected for our top 4. Are you talking about specifically Tyler Brooks?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to verify, tie it all together.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a good clarification point, Brian. Thank you for pointing that out. Number 1, for those of you that are going to go by numbers, would be Guy. Number 2 would be Taylor. Number 3 would be Rob. And number 4 would be Dana. So it was the way we interviewed on Tuesday evening. So good point. Thank you for pointing that out, Brian. Audrey?
My top candidate is number 4, Dana. And I think I stay with the same reasons that I said the other night, and I think I will quit with that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Plowman, Andrew?
Thank you. Yeah, I believe my favorite of the candidates is going to be Tyler. He would be at the top, I believe. I like his calm, forthright demeanor. He seemed eager to learn. He mentioned that he's got a little bit larger of a family and he wants to be active and involved with his family in the community, and so I think he would make a fine candidate. Tyler Brooks.
Did you wish to have a number 2, or did you want to stay with just a number 1?
That would be my top. I'm kind of undecided between a few of the others
Sure.
later on, so I'd be splitting hairs with the others.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Osmus. Julie?
Well, I have definitely struggled with this. At first, I thought that 1 and 2 were out. And what I liked about number 3, Robert, was that he was more local. He knew Willmar. He knew city management. I probably would have liked, I thought I'd want to see more about Dana, but over the day and a half, I've gotten a lot of input from both the city employees and community people, and they are really liking Tyler. So I want to morph the 2 of them together.
How do we do that?
If only we knew. So I just need to see more of them in person. And I like the leadership of Tyler. I like the energy of him. I like the experience of Robert. And Dana, really strong in community development. But I don't know what his tie-in to our area would be and his buy-in to our area. But he did grow up in Wisconsin, so he at least is familiar with our climate and Minnesota. Oh, you want an answer, don't you?
You bring up all good points.
I know, and I've been struggling with this all day. So I would probably, I'd probably go with number 3 just for experience, Robert. But I definitely want to know more and see more from Tyler and Dana.
Can you give, so number 1 is Rob, and then number 2 would be Tyler or Dana?
I'd probably go with Tyler.
And then number 3, Dana.
Yep.
Okay. Next, we have Councilmember Davis, Vicky.
All right, so I think my first pick would be Tyler and my second pick would be Dana.
Did you want to expand on any of that at all, or it's just fine? It's just fine that way.
No, they're just the ones I felt the most comfortable with, I think. Just after the things we've learned over the last couple days and stuff, those are the ones that stood out to me the most.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Butterfield, Tom.
I have number 4 as my first and number 2 as my second. I've also, like Julie, had a lot of input from community members from Willmar, and they want us to interview Steve Wilkins. They have asked me if we could get him in for an interview.
He is not, he did not apply. He had an opportunity to apply, and the council had already voted on that of moving forward with the candidates that chose to apply. So I would not entertain that at this point, but once we have concluded with polling all of the council members, if you would want to make that as a motion, you certainly could do that. But the council has voted on that on one separate time, and he did not submit an application.
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
fine with that. I just had to fill in what people who were asking for me.
Yeah, I heard that too, Tom. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Next, we have Councilmember Osk, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My top choice is Dana. I think he has relevant experience for the position. He's got a solid background in development, which is really needed right now as we move forward with economic opportunities in the community. If I'm picking 2, I'll also pick Rob. I believe he knows who he is. I believe he knows exactly what it takes to be a city administrator in Minnesota. And he too certainly has the relevant education and experience and background.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember O'Brien, Mike.
First of all, I just like to thank all 4 of them. I hated doing interviews, so I can relate to these guys. But my top pick would be number 2, Tyler. And I looked at a lot of the things that he's accomplished, not only as an adult, but as a young man. He has a lot of character. I love the fact that he wants to get in and meet the people of this community. He's got just a lot of positives. And my second choice would be number 4, would be Dana. So what you're looking at for me is 2 and 4 at this time.
Okay. So I've chosen to go last, and I wanted to hear from all of you first before I make my selections, my choices. And this was a very, very difficult conversation for me. And the reason it was difficult for me is that I was hearing two things within the community. The first thing I heard loud and clear, and we had people at our table telling us, local, local, local. And I was dismayed that we did not have more local candidates apply, and that put us kind of in a bit of a quandary. And so then I looked at what have we been doing in the past? And I've looked over our last 5 administrators over 2 years. We have brought them in from other states. We've hired them from Minnesota. And with the exception of our candidate that we had and our administrator that we had immediately following Mick Schmidt, the tenures have been very short. And with that in mind, I looked and said, are we heading down a path expecting a different outcome and putting in the same input? And I put that in my selection for the candidates who I had voted for to interview. And I think those of you that kept those notes, you will find that I think that I was consistent in what I'm talking about right now. I also thought to myself, if we were in a situation of bringing somebody in with limited experience around city administration and how city administration functions, what can we do? And as all of you know, I am a very strong proponent of the League of Minnesota Cities. I also believe that the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities has a function in Greater Minnesota, but they are both strong organizations and they both provide us leadership mentoring opportunities. And so I took it upon myself to call Dave Unmock, and he gave me permission to share this evening. And he said that if we were to hire somebody with limited city administrator experience, the league would be more than happy to provide assistance, although they do not have a formal training program. He would be willing to provide assistance. He has served in an administrator role along with Luke, the second in command at the league. And I know with Councilmember Nelson, in her connections with the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, I know that we would have that same support there, and I feel very confident about that. I also feel very confident that we have a very strong, diverse city council. We have people that want the best for Willmar. We heard that on the introductions on Tuesday, and everybody sitting at this table only wants what's best for Willmar. With that being said, I believe we have a tremendous opportunity to change the narrative. And the narrative that we have in front of us right now is, are we going to continue the path that we have in the past and have possible turnover, or are we going to chart a new path? And I personally believe it's time for us to chart a new path. And my candidate choices are relevant in regards to that. My number one choice would be Tyler. The reason I talk about Tyler in a positive fashion is the fact that he's young, he's energetic, he's a problem solver, he's a proven leader, he is highly decorated in the branch of service. And my second choice would be Dana. Dana, on the start of the interview process, started out very strong on the city administrator side of things, And at about question 6, he switched his answers more to a community development role. And the 3 questions that he was asked on follow-up were all around community development. I believe that shows a strength that he has and a willingness for him to learn, push forward, and strive to make our community a stronger community. So my choices are candidate number 2, Tyler, candidate number 4, Dana. At this time, I would open it up for general conversation. If you wish to speak, turn your light on or raise your hand and I'll call on you. And Patty and Brian, can you help me tabulate here? Councilmember O'Brien.
I just wanted to say a little bit more about my choice, Tyler. I do have a military background, and I looked at all the things he accomplished, not only here in the United States, but in the Middle East. He is a born leader, this young man. And what Mayor Calvin has said, yes, he's young and inexperienced, but boy, what a future I believe he has. And like I say, I looked at a lot of stuff, and I checked this university that he's not an ROTC candidate instructor, and that is an amazing university, aeronautics university that he belongs to. And just now anybody gets into that thing. You've got to be a bright person, and you've got to be well respected to get in there and train these people. This is the 2nd rated aeronautic listed in the United States, and probably the 2nd in the world. And so he comes with a lot of great credentials, not only because of his character, but I believe some of the things that he's accomplished. I know what that takes, and he's had a lot of men. I'll give you just a quick example. In the military, you don't have exactly all the trained people underneath you. You've got to work with what you got a lot of times, especially when you're overseas. And for him to put together the things that he did with his other leaders is amazing. I know what that took. And so I just kudos to his career, and I just wish him the best.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Osk.
Actually, a follow-up question to Councilmember O'Brien. The ROTC program at Embry-Riddle that you speak of, can you say more about like exactly what makes that kind of different than other ROTC programs, or perhaps what Mr. Brooks would have been doing there that makes that so significant?
Well, I actually talked to the university, not necessarily directly about this person, but about that program. And he told me that the quality of the people that has to come through there to be doing what he's doing. I specifically asked him exactly what it said in his resume. And he said that individual, not that person, but that position comes, you have to have very good credentials to do that ROTC in that university. Answer your question?
Additional comments or question? Councilmember Nelson. Audrey, did you want to add an additional person to your list at this point, or did you want to stay with just the one?
I think I'm fine.
Thank you. Councilmember Osmus.
So like I said, I've struggled all day with the decision, and I know that I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth as far as when I talk about when we would hire for the police department. I would say, we can teach somebody how to write an accident report. We can teach somebody how to process a crime scene, but we can't teach morals and character. And I do believe Tyler has that. And that is one thing that I like about him. But now you go to a city administrator position. And I think I wished he had some more experience. I do know that he did attend, what did he say? Some of the, like we call the League of Minnesota Cities conferences to become educated about city management. But then I also go back to our core purpose. I mean, what do we have to do as a city? And so I think as far as our functions, the police department is good. So I think about public safety is number one. What do we need to provide to our community? Public safety is number one. Fire department's doing fine. Police department's doing fine. Public works is doing fine. They will function. Our toilets will flush. Our water will will continue to be clean. So when I think of the basic things that we as a city council have to provide to our citizens, we can do that. So now we're looking at the leadership from the helm, and I think the struggle is, can we develop a young person, or do we go with somebody who has that knowledge, with like Robert from Benson, that can come in and knows Willmar and already knows city government. That's the things I'm struggling with, and that's I just wanted to say that. I keep going back and forth on that. You know, ideally, I would love to have, let's say we have Robert as the administrator, and then we have Tyler as the assistant to be mentored under him, and then we have Dana as our city planner. And we have taken care of a lot of problems.
Yeah, that's some bold statements. Additional comments? Okay, Tom, I don't want to brush you off here, and I said at the conclusion of our scoring, I would come back and ask if you wanted to make a motion. Again, with the premise of what I had previously stated, if that is your desire, it is not my desire to slow that process down. Although we just understand we have voted on this once before.
I don't know if I'm ready to make a motion. I'd rather see how the interviews go first and then go from there. If they don't work out, I mean, that's an option to add Steve on after the next round. But I'm just getting a lot of feedback from the community to get Steve involved on this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for understanding. Additional comments or questions? What I see here, and Patty, confirm, make sure I've got this correct. I've got Dana at a 6.7. And the reason I have him at a 6.7 is that Councilmember Osmus voted for 3. I have Tyler at 7, and I have Rob at 3. That's the way I have it scored. I'm fine with going 7-7, but I just want to point that out that one council member did have 3 votes. So is that what you have? Okay. Brian, you as well?
Yes, the scoring would identify the top 2 candidates as Brooks and Schoening, yes.
Brian, any comments from you at this point as our sitting administrator?
I have nothing at this point.
Okay. Patty, anything that you would like to add?
I would just like to add that Brian and I and the mayor are trying to work out a schedule so we could get that out to you, hopefully, possibly tomorrow. My idea would be to call the candidates and let them know. I believe that they're all watching tonight, but I will personally call each of them and then invite the 2 candidates back for an in-person interview.
Okay. Councilmember O'Brien, Mike, I saw you had your hand up. Are you guys getting a lot of background noise from me or not?
To say to Patty, sorry for being such a burr in your saddle. I called her numerous times and she returned a lot of calls and got back to me with a lot of pertinent information, and I really appreciate that, Patty.
Okay. Okay, so with that, Patty, would you like to talk a little bit about what you're seeing Thursday look like? Maybe starting at, I think we're starting at 9:30, right? And then talk about that community involvement. I know that that was important to a number of council members of making sure that we had the community involved. So, and the
Yeah.
details are not all worked out on this, by the way.
Correct. What we would be looking at is possibly like opening it up with coffee with the city council, with the public, getting to know the two candidates, then bringing it into, and Brian may have to, or the mayor might have to help me here, bringing in the chamber, and then also a tour for both of them, and then at separate times. Then lunch with the candidates, and then they would actually have an opportunity to meet with staff, and then an opportunity then for the council for a formal interview, each of them. Brian or the mayor, did I miss something?
The only thing I would add is that during the time of meeting with the chamber, there possibly would be a set aside time to meet simply with staff. So one of the people would be meeting with the chamber, the other would be meeting just with staff alone. And then we would have a tour of the community, and that tour will be led by community leaders that will be selected between the administrator, Patty, and myself. If anybody wants input on who those should be, we're certainly willing to listen to that, but we will be using community leaders to do those tours. And then again, like Patty had stated, we'll be having a noon meal, and that will be with key department directors or key city staff, which is pretty much department directors, and the council and the candidates. And so there will be an opportunity for the public to be involved. I think there's 3 interactions with the public, if I remember correctly, or 3 opportunities for public engagement. So morning, afternoon, and then for the interviews at night, the public could be involved in all 3 of those pieces. Any questions on that? Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. I attended when the chamber had a interview process for the Ridgewater president, the last one, and that went over very well, where they had community people in. I'm not quite sure what you're planning to do with the chamber, but I think that was a very successful way to engage business people also and allow for a question and answer. So I don't know what you're thinking about or the time frame for the chamber, but that would be a suggestion from my part to consider doing what was done for the president of Ridgewater.
Yeah, that's a good point, Councilmember Nelson. Audrey, that would be that exact same format, and it would be done in one of the galleries at the conference center so that we could have the spacing that would be needed for social distancing. And correct me if I'm incorrect on this, but who was invited to that was the business community, chamber members, and then neighboring city administrators. That's how I recall that. I've been in contact with Chamber President Warner, and he's willing to facilitate pulling that similar process together. Are you good with that?
Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, the room was full for both of them. And I think it was, you know, it was a good opportunity for the community to see both candidates.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions on process for next Thursday? Councilmember Osk.
I don't know if it's exactly a process question, but just kind of an observation and maybe a question for Patty. I've had a couple members of the public who have, just said to me, kind of, hey, when you're thinking about this, like, my favorite is Mr. Brooks. He's so young. That would be great. As I listen to my colleagues, even here tonight, quite a few of them led off with, he's young. How do we, like, is this not something we're not allowed to evaluate on? I mean, is this not a problem that we're evaluating and candidates based on age, that we're leading off with one of the primary reasons we like a candidate is because of his age?
Patty?
I think I heard everything that you asked. What my understanding of the process is for each of you, and what I instructed each of you guys to do, and women, is to go through the applications and decide which candidate you feel will be the right candidate for Willmar based off of their qualifications and their schooling, and go back to the brochure and continue to look at what you're looking for and to make sure that that is a match. That's why we wanted you to take a little bit more time and then meet today to discuss the candidates, but then to also get the feedback from the community. And that is also very important. Age, you have to take out of it. Age is not, that is not an issue. We're not talking about age. We're talking about which one is going to, and which are the candidates are going to be the best fit. And that's what we were discussing tonight, is which ones are going to be a good fit for Willmar.
Are we good on that? Councilmember Osk? Okay. I want to make sure there's no other questions that people have, because this is a very important decision we're making. And I'm comfortable with pulling 2 back. I'm very comfortable with that. And I believe that that would be the recommendation that I would make. But I'm certainly willing to listen if we want to bring 3 back. But I think 2, from how we saw the numbers come out, would be the right thing to do. So, okay, Councilmember Butterfield, Tom.
Well, we got 3 out of the 4. I say bring all 3 of them back that got votes.
Okay. Councilmember Osmus, Julie.
I'm just wondering, timing wise, as far as the community input and the whole interview process, are we better off with 2 than 3 for scheduling?
Our staff will do a good job of scheduling whatever we choose in the time frame that I had sent to me from Brian. 2 or 3 fits into the schedule. Does 2 work better? Yes, probably. I also think a little bit, and Patty's been through this more than I have, as Brian has. But I think when the feedback is given, you're probably going to be down to 2 anyways, probably, would be my guess. I don't know that for a fact, but so go ahead, Julie.
Are we going to have psychologicals?
What it is it's more like a management and leadership assessment. And you had taken that the last time, I had given the link to the new city council and had them take it. When I contact the candidates that are going to be moving forward, they will be given a link to do the management and leadership assessment. We will take that information and then we will combine it with the results of the city council. We will also be asking them for references, and we will be doing references, and we will be asking them for permission to do a criminal and criminal background check, and that will also verify their college and all of the information that we need. So that information will be requested from them as early as tomorrow morning.
Go ahead, Julie.
And the reason I asked that is on the past interviews, it just seems to me like the psychologicals have been spot on. And I don't know if that's the process you're talking about. But if they said that they were timid or didn't like confrontation, that's exactly what played out and what we saw like after they had been hired. So I'm waiting to put a lot of weight on that, on those evaluations to truly tell me about the person.
Yeah, I think one of the hires that we made, there was a lot of conversation about those scores that happened amongst the council, and the validity of those scores. And I think your observation is spot on with my recollection of that process. Okay, what I'm seeing is that the majority of the Councilmember O'Brien, Mike.
The psychological you're talking about, is this the MCC one you're talking about? MCCI?
It's modified, right, Patty?
Pardon me?
It's a modified psychological, right? It's not
modified.
Okay, I'm seeing the majority looking comfortable with 2. One council member would like us to bring back all 3. At this point, I'm going to say that there's consensus on bringing back 2. If you want to bring it back all 3, I need some more dialogue about that. Otherwise, I'm seeing a consensus to move forward with 2. Patty, I think that's your direction. If you could contact Kyler and Dana and see how they wish to proceed on the next steps. With that, I believe that we have accomplished our task for this evening. And with that, I'd entertain, unless somebody has something else to say, I'm ready to adjourn the meeting. Councilmember Osk.
Just another quick question. The way that you phrased that to Patty made me wonder. So what happens if one of these finalists decides that they're no longer interested for whatever reason? Do we move forward with just one? Do we come back and get to reevaluate? How does that play out?
Patty, you want to help with that? I believe we would move forward with 1, but I'm not sure.
As of yesterday, I know that the candidates are all willing, and they knew that the interview was going to be coming up, and they were all interested, if they were picked, to move forward in the process. So as of yesterday, I know that they were all anxious to move forward.
Well, you bring up an important point then. So if we have one of them that drops out, do you want to pull this group back together to make another decision on bringing them back? Or do you want to leave that in the hands of Patty and Brian to make that decision? Councilmember Osk again, Justin.
I'd certainly at that point favor bringing in 2 candidates, moving on to to Mr. Wolfington.
Okay.
I'd also say that it sounds like from what Patty's told us, it's probably unlikely.
I'm sorry, I talked over you. It's my fault.
I was just going to add that based on what Patty just told us, I think that would be unlikely. So sounds like Patty's done this before.
Okay. Patty, on behalf of the mayor's office, and I believe I'm speaking for the entire council, your professionalism and dedication to this process, exemplary. You are a rock star. You've been a pleasure to work with, very professional, very prompt, very courteous, and we are very fortunate to have you at the helm assisting us with this process. So thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion been
Second.
made by Osmus, seconded by Nelson, and we are adjourned. Meeting's over.